Hi, everyone. In honor of President's Day, let's go imperial in terms of our IT. That's where we're headed here on Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We hope you enjoyed your President's Day. I'd like to do a survey. How many of you out there took off for President's Day? Raise your hands. We do my romper room thing. Oh, yeah. I see Tom and Dick and Harry. Okay. It is a federal holiday. I think if there's any federal employees left, they probably took off. But I don't know how many are left, and that's what we're going to talk about on this fine Tuesday. Let me tell you who we're talking about it with. We've got a nice gang assembled. First of all, from Hudson, Ohio, where he's officially ensconced before he heads out to this week's Tech Field Day, which I believe is a Cloud Tech Field Day. It's the CEO, founder of Tech Field Day of Futurum Company, Stephen Foskett. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good. President's Day, I had to come up, I was trying to tell my team, what's your favorite president? How about Jimmy Carter? Didn't have a great presidency, but he seems like a decent guy. But of course, if you broaden the scope, how about Bertrand Russell? He was the president of Pugwash, an all-around great guy.
Okay, so presidents don't have to be U.S. presidents.
Of anything.
Yeah. That's like people who maintain or look at eliminating government waste don't have to be appointed or approved or anything either.
And nobody. Just let that guy fire everyone.
Well, he is. All right, moving on from Stephen, we'll go right up. I see we're starting early. We're moving over to Harrison, New York, where we have our Chief Content Officer in residence, Mike Vizard. Good morning, Mike. I hope you enjoyed President's Day.
I enjoyed President's Day and the Valentine's Day before that, so it was kind of a lovely set of bookends in some ways.
Yeah, so hit us with a good president. Come on.
A good president? Well, of course, there's always George Washington, who started this whole thing. But behind that, I kind of miss Abraham Lincoln not having his own day.
You mentioned that when I was younger, we had Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday, and then they just combined it into President's Day.
Well, this is official. It's officially Washington-Lincoln Day in Ohio. If that makes you feel better.
Well, yeah, that does make me feel better, actually, Stephen. Good. I'm glad they did that. Let me introduce, though. Well, she's not the president. Well, she is the president of EcoTech Insights, but she's also our analyst for all things sustainable and green, Bonnie Schneider. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. Big day for you today. We'll be getting to it a little later. So, gentlemen, lady, it is the day after President's Day. And, Washington warned us about this stuff, speaking of Washington. And I've been talking and writing about it now for a couple weeks. No one raises their hand and says, I'm for fraud, or I'm for waste, or I'm for paying more money that doesn't get used well and winds up in people's pockets illegally or immorally. But there's a right way and a wrong way. And so, Mike, let me kick it over to you. Have we reached an age of an imperialism in government IT?
I think we're going to have to sort this all out with some sort of Supreme Court ruling, and the sooner the better. But a lot of folks are walking around, to your point, and they're saying, what's the big deal? I mean, it's the Department of Government Efficiency has been unleashed on these agencies with the approval of the heads of those agencies to go look for this waste. So on a certain level, they're saying that it's all above board. It's just being super aggressive. And the average person is standing there going, well, yeah, most of what we think is spent by the government is wasted anyway. So why not apply analytics and all this stuff to come to some better outcome? And maybe the only way to do it is, with a blunt instrument. So that's one thought process. The other thought process is, of course, this is executive overreach and things that have been approved by Congress to be spent are not being spent. So, Alan, which side of this equation are we on?
I stand on the right side. of
The
the
correct side.
equation. The correct side, yeah, not right or left. So I agree. No one raises their hand and says, I'm all for fraud. I'm all for waste. I'm all for spending more money. Of course not. But a nation of laws that does not follow their laws is a nation that will not stand. I think Lincoln said something like that.
It's a
Right?
house divided.
House divided, right?
A nation of laws. We are a nation of laws. Now, the right side, and I do mean left versus right, rejoiced over the last couple of years as the Supreme Court on more than one occasion has said these federal agencies cannot overstep their charter given to them by congressional acts, right? We've seen it on several different agencies. Well, I'm telling you that the flip side of that is correct as well. These agencies cannot overstep their charter as given to them by acts of Congress. So when an act of Congress establishes an agency with a specific purpose and budget and charter, it is the executive branch does not have the ability to go against or overrule that act of the legislature. Now, you want to say, well, the heads of these agencies gave them permission. The heads of these agencies are no more than the leftovers of the Saturday Night Massacre that's gone on here. The same way we dropped they had to go through 7 assistant attorney generals to drop the charges against the mayor of New York because the first 7 said, we don't countenance that kind of unlawfulness and that's fraud. What's more than anything else. So eventually they find someone to sit in these agencies who's a loyal collaborator who say, go ahead and do it. That doesn't undo the will of the legislature or Congress, absent an act of Congress. That's number one. Number two, though, I had a good discussion with my friend Tony Bradley about this. And there's an excellent article that I think every single person watching this needs to read by 2 people that I know pretty well in the security space and that I respect an awful lot. Bruce Schneier, who, if you're in security, needs no introduction. Bruce has been, probably one of the foremost personalities, thought leaders in security for as long as I'm in security, 25 plus years or more. And another really smart guy, Davey Ottenheimer. Davi was one of the original Security Bloggers Network members in 2005. He's been with us. I think it was Security Penguin is his blog, but he does a lot more than that now. But Davi and Bruce wrote a really great article. It's in here on it's in here on declaring DOGE unconstitutional. And I will put the URLs in there, read it. They lay it out. What we're doing here, for the sake of reducing fraud and waste, is giving a back door to our, I don't want to call them enemies, but our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, by putting classified information on machines and systems that have not been certified, that have been hacked already and graffiti put on them, that are Swiss cheese. But it's okay. I've had conversations with fairly smart people who say, well, you know what? In the name of progress, we got to do that. Again, not in a nation of laws. We have laws about this. People have gone to jail for releasing classified information like this. This is being done without an act of Congress, without due process, without hearings, without following our rules. I'm all for reducing waste. You want to go do a fact-finding thing. Not to mention that you invited Mr. Fox into the henhouse. You invited a man who has $400 million plus worth of government contracts annually, and you're asking him to police government contracts? You know what? When I took political science, I had a really great teacher who taught us modern political theory, including communism. He was a former socialist in the 30s. He was blacklisted, didn't work for a long time, became a college professor. And then he became a virulent anti-communist because he said, you know what the problem is with communism? It only works if you have a society of atheistic saints. Are we to believe that Elon Musk is an atheistic saint, that he's doing this out of the kindness of his heart? A man who is in bed with the Chinese Communist Party because he needs them for his Tesla business? You know, there used to be rules about conflicts of interest. There are rules. There are laws about conflicts of interest. Just because someone has a lot of money doesn't mean they don't follow the rules. That's what this country's based on. But yet we're saying it's okay because it's Elon, and what could he possibly do wrong? Guys, have we all gotten stupid?
We have forgotten about the absolute power maxim.
Corrupts absolutely. If this stands, I'm telling you, it bodes very ill for a nation founded upon the rule of law.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember too that, the United States has spent centuries lecturing every other country in the world about how to build a nation and how to be a nation of laws and how to have a proper democracy, a proper functioning democracy. The stuff that's going on with Elon Musk and the DOGE is just unconscionable because, allegedly we're a nation bound by the Constitution. Allegedly we're strict construction. I mean, remember when people were all talking about, Republicans were all talking about how, we're getting beyond the Constitution, and we have to return to the strict, what it says in the Constitution. And all these Supreme Court justices as well have said that they are strict constitutionalists. But where's that now? Doesn't the Constitution enumerate which powers are belonging to which branches of government? Doesn't the Constitution talk about the powers of the executive branch? And I'm sure that they have people who are willing to twist themselves into a pretzel, deciding that somehow this is constitutional, but it's clearly not. It's also asinine to have someone go in. I heard one of the things at the education department, they canceled a grant that was a central data collection system. If we can get back to IT here for a moment, they canceled the grant that was central to handling data collection on the demographics of American school children, because that was fundamental to the mission of the education department and all other aspects of government, because, you have to know who these kids are if you're supposed to be supporting them in any way. The reason they canceled it was because the title of the grant was Common Core of Data. And Common Core is a popular, you've heard, that there's all this DEI, anti-DEI stuff. Well, Common Core is a popular phrase for a certain type of teaching that is frowned upon on the right. The fact that they named this grant Common Core of Data made it canceled. And it's like, that is just, you didn't even know what it was. And it's true of most of these grants from the education department that have been canceled last week. A lot of the people who've lost their jobs, it's basically a global search and replace. I can just see somebody sitting there. I don't want to give them any credit, but I can see there with VI, search for this, search for that, and then D. We don't need any of that stuff. It's just ludicrous.
I mean,
And-
when do you ever declare fraud and everything else before the investigation is done? And Stephen, I think they got rid of that list because we're afraid we might track what kids have vaccines.
I don't think that's what was included in that particular
Well, I
one.
just
But
want to throw
I
that
got you.
out there.
I got you. The other thing that's bothering me here is I don't want to be all both sides. It's true that there's waste and there's fraud in the government. And it's true that should be rooted out, but it should be rooted out competently. It should be rooted out by somebody who goes in and looks at things and considers what it is and considers whether it's waste or fraud. I'm sorry, SLS should have been shut down a decade ago in favor of SpaceX and Blue Origin. You can say what you want about Elon Musk, but SpaceX freaking works and SLS is just a giant cash cow. That being said, having Elon Musk be the one to cancel SpaceX, that stinks.
SLS.
Yes, a lot. But
Space Launch System.
Right.
Our big stupid rocket.
I mean, it's just inherently a conflict of interest.
Yeah. So, Alan, in effect, though, constitutionally, I mean, if the president is now exercising what amounts to a pocket veto by not spending money, in effect, we have turned the executive branch into some sort of equivalent of a king.
Well, it's an imperial presidency. That's let's face it, that's what our current president thinks. And he's also appointed 3 of the 8 Supreme Court justices, and 2 of the others are slightly to the right of Hitler. So you've got a majority of the Supreme Court that is far, far right or beholden to this man. And they're our last best hope, Obi-Wan. Right? If things don't work, the next thing is the rebellion.
Well, the funny thing is the prosecutors who quit in New York were all clerks for most of the hard right justices. So go figure.
Well, you hope that you got to hope that the decency and the law-abiding nature of our judiciary from an impartiality, there's outliers like that crazy woman down in Florida who we appointed that somehow every case got assigned to her. I don't know how that happened. But for the most part, our judiciary, our U.S. attorneys are, I think, law-abiding, decent people. Right? Before nominating people for the judiciary became a political sport over the last 8 or 10 years. We had, to become a federal judge, generally you had to have an ABA, American Bar Association recommendation. You had to have some experience. There's good people on the bench.
Let's call it competence.
That's a good word that we seem to have forgotten. Competence.
I just wanted to add something.
Go ahead.
It's something that Stephen said, but they're looking through, the waste or whatever. They're using an algorithm to detect certain words. And what Stephen was pointing out, something with education could be triggered by the word Common Core. What I'm hearing from my colleagues in weather and climate is a concern for the word climate
Yes.
as a trigger word, and then losing funding for that. And I just got an email. I haven't looked at it, but my dad sent it this morning that Bloomberg, as in Michael Bloomberg, was going to step in and fund a lot of the climate projects that are probably going to be canceled. So that is a big concern, number one, with just the funding already that's been designated for climate. And number two, as a meteorologist, another huge concern within the community that I'm in is the data. We know weather data has always been free to use, and it's something that private weather leverages as well, and public weather. If that becomes completely privatized, that's going to be a real problem, I think. So we'll see what happens, but I just wanted to give you that perspective also.
Absolutely. I mean, quite frankly, if they're eliminating everything because climate change doesn't really exist and nothing amount with fossil fuels, what does that do for Tesla?
Well, it didn't quite get $400 million worth of Tesla vehicles get sold to the State Department, though it almost did. Though it should be pointed out that program came up in the Biden administration. But still, that was another news story from last week. But talk about self-dealing. Ultimately, I'm reminded of the Onion article, the facetious article supposedly written by Jimmy Carter. It was not, saying, they made me sell my effing peanut farm. I'm thinking of that. It's like, he had to sell his effing peanut farm, and yet this.
Because I think, and this is the biggest thing, I've had this conversation with numerous people on social media. They're willing to overlook obvious craziness like this for the sake of, we won an election and we can do whatever we want. And that's a problem.
And I want to leave you with one more thing. I think the reason that Elon is doing all this, I don't think he's political at all. I think the reason he's doing all this is so that he can get to Mars. He will cozy up to the Chinese Communist Party. He will support right-wing nationalists in Europe. He'll fund Trump's rise to presidency, because he knows that is the only way that he gets to Mars, and that's all he cares about.
I think he cares about making more money.
Nope, he wants to get to Mars. That's my thought.
Okay. I would just say to all our IT friends out there who might be anywhere near this, be careful. There will be lawsuits. You will be called to testify, and you will have to explain what you did and didn't do. So think twice.
Agreed. All right, let's take a break before they come and censor us. Thank God we don't rely on any federal subsidies or anything. But we're going to come back and let's talk about something easy. Tech Field Day was live at Cisco Live last week over in Europe. There's still a Europe, isn't there? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. We're watching Techstrong, gang. You'll be right back.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to Techstrong, gang. So we were in Amsterdam for Cisco Live last week, and I brought a few tidbits to share with the Techstrong community from that show. Now, I wasn't there, but Tom Hollingsworth, who runs our networking, mobility, security events, was with a great group of Tech Field Day delegates, along with some of our staff. We did live stream a bunch of presentations on a channel you might watch called Techstrong TV. We also are uploading those to YouTube. If you're interested, you can see them at techfieldday.com. But, here's sort of the takeaway, the TLDR of Cisco Live. Now, as you can imagine, it's 2025, so Cisco spent a lot of time talking about AI. In fact, according to the folks that have talked to the insiders and management at Cisco all the way up to the top, Cisco is all in with AI. Now, you could probably substitute almost any enterprise tech company and say exactly the same thing, but what is Cisco actually doing? Well, as you can imagine, they're a server vendor. Or did you forget that? Yes, Cisco's UCS is one of the leading and probably the most advanced integrated blade type system out there. The UCS is actually adding more capabilities for GPUs. You can now have up to 8 NVIDIA H100 GPUs on those UCS servers, according to Tom's reporting. And they're really trying to go after the market for not just AI training, of course, but the emerging market for inferencing apps, basically using AI to do productive stuff. One of the more interesting aspects to me was that Cisco announced something called AI Defense a few weeks back, which is essentially a system, let's call it an agent, that looks for AI applications running in your environment and allowing you to, you, an IT manager, to control some of that. It also helps service providers and others to try to figure out how AI is being used. This is an interesting angle for Cisco and one that I think is pretty smart. Now, Cisco also did some really cool stuff with DPUs and a new their own homegrown silicon. But let's put a pin in that for a second, because I want to hear what the other folks here have to say about Cisco's place in the AI-centric data center. What do y'all think?
I think this is a battle for the control plane that's coming around. And, Cisco and HP and Dell like to talk about the data center and on-premise as if AWS and Google and Microsoft have no ambitions in that space, when in reality, they seriously do. And then the question is going to come down to, do I go with a control plane that enables me to manage a unified cloud from Microsoft, AWS, Google, or do I go with something from Cisco, HPE, or Dell, and I manage that hybrid cloud infrastructure that way? Honestly, the cloud guys have a lot more experience with that kind of control plane than the HPEs and Dells and Ciscos do. So the question is, does the customer view those people as the center of their IT universe, or now just kind of hanging around the edge of some other IT universe managed by somebody else? That's, to me, where the battle's going to be.
To me, Cisco has always been a company that sells picks and shovels to gold miners. Right? They sell the hardware that made these data centers run. And even early on in the cloud, the not the server per se, but the connectivity hardware and security hardware were Cisco. They've lost a lot of that business, right? But the hardware business, or the hardware networking infrastructure business, is not what it was. Yeah, there's a lot going on with servers and how many NVIDIAs can you stuff into a rack and all of these things. But the traditional Cisco business is not enough for Cisco anymore. And so the question they face is, do they want to just continue selling picks and shovels, though there may be different picks and shovels? Maybe they're more servers, they're more, not just the traditional networking gear. Or do they enviously eye what Google and AWS and these others have, which is the service layers on top of that hardware? So it's not enough just to do the hardware, right? We're going to layer on services there with, and they've tried this with WebEx and their security and Splunk now, right? Cisco has remade itself, or trying in the process of remaking itself, to be more than just that pick and shovel seller. So we could talk about their latest, greatest hardware, but to me, the real action at Cisco is, what are they doing service-wise on top of the hardware? And that will determine whether they go the way of Intel or Microsoft.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the other half of what was announced, the nerdy half, is really hardware. And let's dive into that for a second. So Cisco is actually ripping a page out of Apple's playbook here. They've introduced their own Silicon One, is what they're calling it, their own switching platform. And this effectively is, just like Apple was able to push Intel out of the Macs, this is a way to push Broadcom and CloudScale and companies like that out of the Cisco switches. Those were a pretty big cost line item for Cisco, I'm sure. Also, it's a kind of a generic platform. If you're using an enterprise switch ASIC, it's pretty much, Broadcom's been good at differentiating them, but ultimately, Broadcom is happy to sell them to your competitors as well. So Cisco has done some pretty cool stuff on the switching side here. The new Nexus 9300 line includes their new switch ASIC, which, again, like Apple, incorporates things that the generic hardware wasn't incorporating. In this case, it's DPUs. Now, we've talked in the past, I'm sure, on Techstrong Gang, certainly on Tech Field Day events and so on, about DPUs. You remember the Pensando group which was made up of that group of Cisco execs called MPLS that typically develops things and then Cisco buys them back and all that. Well, when it came to Pensando, it's interesting. AMD was the one that bought it instead of Cisco. And so AMD has basically these client offload networking cards with offload engines, incredibly powerful. And we've seen a lot of use cases for those things to, in the AI space, but also in conventional networking. And as you mentioned, in the security space, in, new networking technologies. Well, Cisco is now integrating that same type of technology into the switch ASIC for themselves. And so basically you've got a DPU on both sides, which accelerates everything. Again, very Apple-like to do this, but also it enables Cisco to be a little bit more of a master of their own destiny when it comes to where they're going with their Cisco, with their underlying hardware. Now, there still needs to be a bit of a rationalization here because, now Cisco has multiple different fabrics, multiple different operating systems. The Nexus portfolio now supports NXOS, ACI, and Sonic, which is a new up-and-coming platform for networking. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Cisco rationalizes those things. I expect there will be more announcements at Cisco Live US, which we'll also be covering. But overall, again, I feel like what we're seeing here is a company, again, like Apple, that's trying to focus on user experience, trying to focus on the value or the high margin part of the market, trying to make sure that those customers are the happiest customers, bring more to services, more to software, and control the platform all the way down to the chips, which is something you don't see as much of in the enterprise tech space as you do in the consumer tech space. What do you guys think of this?
I think that it'll take Broadcom in short order to kind of converge DPUs into their own networking processors. And
well, they certainly have that capability, don't they?
And then they will turn around and commoditize the pricing to the point where it's very difficult, as we've seen historically, right? Cisco's done a good job for creating their own networking chips for a long time, but the map, from a manufacturing point of view, seems to be against them. And the speed at which the other guys can copy that is getting faster and faster. So I'm kind of not seeing the cycle of how they're going to get enough scale on their processors and that architecture to kind of make it worth competing head to head against the Broadcom and whoever else decides to come out there. And remember, the cloud guys are also all making their own networking chips now. And so a lot of that business that Cisco might have had over the years, there's just a lot more options.
And the cloud guys are right there with DPUs as well. I think you should point that out that, a lot of them are really making hay with this same technology. So in a way, Cisco is almost following them.
Cisco will not achieve its corporate goals on hardware. They have got to put a bigger bet on services and software. That's the bottom line here. The hardware business, if it was a commodity before, it's even more of a commodity now, because you no longer have certain, I don't want to use the monopoly word, but powerhouses that you did before. There were the barriers to entry to burning your own silicon, designing your own silicon, fabbing your own silicon, or subbing out the fabrication piece of it, are much, much lower than they ever were. So if you're going to stake your claim on purely custom silicon without corresponding software, what makes the Apple chips great is because they're optimized for something called the Mac OS and iOS.
Right there. Yep.
Right. Without Mac OS or iOS, who the hell needs an M4?
Exactly. And well, that's obvious. Everybody who bought an M4 iPad. It's also exactly what I'm seeing too, Alan, that the goal of this platform is to enable Cisco's software and services. And if they can do that, then they have a sustainable differentiation in the networking market. I mean, they are still the 800-pound gorilla. They still sell more than anybody else in pretty much every market they play in. And they can maybe use that to, claw back market share and so on. But if they can't, if this is just a way to extract a little bit more margin from those switches, it ain't going to work. it needs to be a truly integrated product or platform a la Apple. And we're going to be keeping a close eye on that. So,
right. And don't forget that there's this little Chinese outfit called Yahweh that's trying to close off half the market for them.
No. Yahweh, it's Huawei.
Yahweh's a different guy.
People pray to. All righty. On that note, let's take a break here. Mike's mixing metaphors with gods and service providers. We need a break. We're going to be back. Got some big news from Bonnie coming at you. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Well, this week I have an exciting announcement that's coming. My report. I've been working on this for quite a while now, and it's called Executive Strategies that, I'm sorry, I'm already getting my report's name wrong. Decisions that define executive strategies and innovations driving corporate sustainability. And this report came after 2 years of interviews, over 100 executives at the cutting edge of sustainability and technology. And it's fascinating to go through all of their insights and put together and synthesize down this report, which takes a look at AI, it takes a look at the circular economy and strategies in leadership, how to have that sustainability message go beyond the silo of one department. So I'm very excited. It will be on the website ecotechreport.com on Wednesday, February 19th. I've been showing some previews of it on LinkedIn starting on Monday. And one of them is this preview video I'd like to share with everyone right now.
Sustainability is now a business priority. Bonnie Schneider's latest report, Decisions That Define, Executive Strategies and Innovations Driving Corporate Sustainability, based on exclusive interviews with 100 industry leaders, reveals how companies use technology to cut emissions and improve efficiency. Leaders in data and AI, including Perforce, Delphix, Dynatrace, Vultr, and Platform SH, are optimizing infrastructure for lower energy use. Hugging Face, New Relic, and Buzz Solutions are advancing AI to drive sustainability and climate resilience. Across supply chains, Palo Alto Networks, Pure Storage, Dell Technologies, HP Renew Solutions, and Human IT are reducing waste, lowering emissions, and providing disregarded devices to those in need. Workforce transformation is also underway, with sustainableIT.org, Mia AI, and Climate People integrating sustainability into operations, training, and hiring. 2025 marks a turning point. With the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive now in effect, businesses face strict new requirements, greater transparency demands, and critical deadlines for compliance. Powered by Ecotech Insights and the Techstrong Group, Decisions That Define, Executive Strategies and Innovations Driving Corporate Sustainability demonstrates that sustainability is no longer optional, but a catalyst for resilience and growth. Go to ecotechreport.com to read the executive summary. The full report releases on Wednesday, February 19th.
You can also go to Ecotech Insights on the blog. I have a brand new blog up there now, which also talks about some of the findings in the report, Decisions That Define. I'm very excited to share this with everyone. And like I said, I've been working on it for months, and it's kind of long. It's 31 pages, but it has lots of pictures, so it's easy to digest. And a lot of companies that are in it, you've heard of, maybe some you haven't. That was the exciting part, to talk a little bit about some of the more cutting edge AI startups that are looking to do climate mitigation, climate risk mitigation. And one of the companies featured, actually two, focused on wildfire mitigation. And I wrote this before the wildfires in California. So it's very timely indeed. And I'm looking forward to everyone's feedback on it. And I also want to thank everybody on Techstrong Gang, because our conversations also were always in my head when I was putting it together.
Thank you, Bonnie. Well, it's interesting, right? This is what makes the world go round. The government could try to take out anything with the word climate in it or sustainability or any of these things. But yet we're at a point in the world right now where this is staring us in the face. And the time for us to do something meaningful that will mitigate this somehow, or I don't even know if we can't solve it. I don't know how much of an effect mitigation we can have, but the time for us to do something is now. And what's nice about this is you have over 100 interviews, over 100 executives you've spoken to, and they run the gamut, right, around sustainability, very heavily weighted in the IT and technology space. But at least it's clear at that level that sustainability, mitigation of global climate change and so forth, and trying to be more renewable and all of this is important. And we, all kidding aside, we argue and we yell about what's going on in our federal government right now. Sustainability is important. The work you're doing is important. And it's not just important for me or Mike or Stephen. It's important for our children and their children and for this world, because doing the same old is not going to end well, and it's going to end quick if we don't jump ahead of this. So I would highly recommend not just leaders out there, but tomorrow's leaders and wannabe leaders, go take a look at the report. See what leaders are saying. See what, the actual facts on the ground are. An interesting thing that goes on in our society today, and I think it's one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in, is everyone says, well, I want to listen to all sides, and then I'm going to form my opinion, and that's my opinion. Opinions are like butts. My grandmother used to use a different word than butts. Right? But opinions are like that. We all have one. But truth is eternal. There's true and there's false. Everyone can have an opinion, but what's true is true. I don't really care what your opinion is. Well, my opinion, it's truth. And when we're talking about stuff like this, I think that's the key to it, Bonnie, is there's truth here, and we need to do something about it. So great work.
Thanks.
I'm really excited to see how it comes out, people's reactions.
I am coming to arguably an opinion, but have we reached a point where the mitigation side of this thing is just, we're not going to get there, so we need to focus more of our energy on things that take carbon out of the atmosphere, and kind of the more of the effort has to be on the fixing?
I think it's a combination of both, because on mitigation for the impacts of more extreme weather events, when we talk about wildfires, dry conditions and things like that, it definitely add more fuel to it. But the mitigation in the technology of detection, early detection with drones, and detecting any spark that's on infrastructure to prevent power outages, that's all, I think, very valuable. And then on the climate tech side, there are incredible innovations happening to remove carbon, to capture solar energy and things like that are all happening at the same time. That's why this report is funny. When I was writing it, it turned out to be much longer than I expected, because there were so many different sides to this story. So, Mike, I think you make a good point that there's that side of it, and then the other as well.
Yep.
Wait. Let's ask Stephen Windmill Foskett what he thinks.
Is that my middle name now?
I thought it was solar.
panel.
So I could Stephen Solar.
Yeah. Now, I was just going to jump in on that too. I have to say that one of the things that is evident in this report is that it's not all driven by. And you guys can throw stuff at me. It's not all driven by feel good liberal, hippy dippy, do better for the children. This is also driven by solid business reasons.
Sure.
You look at some of these things. I want to call out one of the companies that Bonnie focuses on in the report, and that's Pure Storage with their Evergreen architecture. I know those guys; they're not bad people, but I guarantee that they didn't come up with Evergreen for hippy dippy feel good reasons. They came up with Evergreen because it was a solid differentiator, and their customers love it. And I've been to the Pure conference. I have talked to their customers. They absolutely do love it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that your storage array can be migrated forward to such an extent that you can have literally the latest and greatest product from Pure, and parts of it, components of it, are still the original product they came out with over a decade ago, is powerful. And, I think that that's a business reason to look at the circular economy. It's the same with HPE, which is another company you focus on in here. HPE is a huge corporation. They're not driven by do-gooderism. They're driven by business reasons, and they are doing a lot in the circular economy and sustainability. And like I've said many times, you can call me windmill Foskett or solar panel Foskett if you want. Those technologies, you cannot stuff them back down because they make good business sense. They're not just good for the environment. They're good for business. They produce power cheaper. And it's the same with a lot of these other things. You look at, in many ways, I think that we can look at problems and find ways that are ecologically sound.
Right.
And we will find that they're also good business, and no new political administration, no smears and assaults on that is going to change that. And I am optimistic that ultimately, the cat's out of the bag on some of these eco-friendly technologies. You can't stuff them back down.
That's a great point. I definitely am glad you said that, because that's one of the theses of what I put together, that it's not just about the do-gooder mentality, that there are solid ROI that I stated. I have data to back it up. And I think that's going to be something that's more looked at. We always talk about on the show that, it depends in the end. Is it cost effective? People don't want to spend the money. And what I found was there were multiple examples just in the report, and there's more that didn't even make it in there, that they were getting that return on investment. Another one is Delphix with their virtualization and storage, and how that is much more efficient, and it's been successful. And Perforce acquired Delphix. So for that technology, that was one of the reasons they acquired them. So as you look through the examples, there are many. So I think that is changing.
Right, but you ruined the view from the golf course out onto the ocean. I mean, what are we going to do about that?
And won't somebody think of the imaginary whales that are killed by imaginary wind turbines?
Well, no, I thought they just caused cancer. That was my opinion. Anyway, what's the website?
It's called ecotechreport.com.
Go check it out. Until then, this is your hippy dippy weather dude saying stay away from the brown acid.
You got my reference.
Yeah, we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of Techstrong TV. Stephen, you are at Tech Field Day, Cloud Tech Field Day.
Yes, we're going to be
live
streaming Cloud Field Day on Techstrong TV and LinkedIn Wednesday and Thursday this week. We've got a great group of people. Really looking forward to it. Tune in.
Fantastic. Mike, I'll see you in New York this week, right?
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it. Until then, everyone, enjoy the rest of the day. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. We're out.